The Buffalo Bills defense has been walking a tightrope this season, and lately, it's been wobbling more than standing firm. For a team with championship aspirations, this side of the ball has become a real concern. After starting the year with 4 wins in 6 games, things have begun to unravel, and the most glaring issue is this defense that just can't seem to stop the run, no matter the personnel, no matter the opponent. Now, if you've been watching the Bills for the last few years, none of this is brand new. Run defense has been a consistent weak spot. But here's the thing, it's not the same problem as before. And that's where it gets troubling. In the past, Buffalo almost seemed to accept mediocrity against the run as a necessary evil in order to dominate against the pass. They ran light boxes, dropped safeties deep, and dared teams to beat them on the ground while locking up through the air. It was calculated. It was schematic. And when it worked, it looked like genius. But this year, it's not that simple. The Bills aren't just getting beat on the ground because they choose to be vulnerable. They're getting beat because they can't stop it, even when they try. There's a big difference between inviting the run and being powerless against it. And right now, the Bills look closer to powerless. Injuries have obviously played a role. You look at the defensive tackle rotation, and it's a carousel of young, inexperienced, or replacement-level players. When Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver are both healthy, this unit can hold up. But that tandem has only been on the field together for 1 game this season. That's it. 1. The rest of the time, it's been rookies like Deion Walker and T.J. Sanders, talented, sure, but highly volatile, eating up meaningful snaps. And when you put high-variance defensive tackles in front of high-variance linebackers like Terrell Bernard, you get a whole lot of unpredictability. Sometimes it looks great, splash plays, tackles for loss, quick penetration. But just as often, if not more, it looks like missed fits, over-pursuit, and wide-open lanes for the opposing running backs. It's like that old saying about relationships. Both partners can't be bad with money. One has to be the responsible one. The same principle applies here. If your D-line is gambling and attacking gaps, you need rock-solid linebackers behind them to clean it up. But when both levels of your defense are flying around trying to make splash plays, you get exposed. That's exactly what's happening to the Bills. And here's the kicker. Even when they go to heavier personnel, it's not helping. This isn't a team dropping in a dime and getting gashed because of soft fronts. They're actually playing base defense at a normal, sometimes even above average rate. They're loading up the box, they're trying to commit numbers to the run, and they're still getting gashed. They lined up with 8 in the box against the Falcons and still gave up an 81-yard touchdown run. That's not scheme. That's execution. That's tackling. That's players being in the wrong gaps and getting out-leveraged. Tackling, in particular, has been a disaster. Missed tackles at the second and third levels are killing this team. There have been games where the defensive line actually held up decently at the point of attack. They weren't getting blown off the ball. The front looked sturdy, but the second level just couldn't clean it up. They'd get there and then bounce off the ball carrier or would take a bad angle and turn a 3-yard gain into an explosive run. That's been a recurring theme, and it's maddening to watch. Matt Milano used to be the biggest culprit in this area. The guy who could give you highlight reel plays but also drive you nuts with missed tackles. But now, it feels like that inconsistency has infected the rest of the unit. And ironically, the one player who used to be a liability in run defense, Tre'Davious White, is now the least of your concerns. It's everyone else you're worried about. So the big question now is, can this get fixed? Can the Bills' defense become good enough against the run to keep this team competitive down the stretch? Because let's be real, they're not suddenly going to become the 2000 Ravens. But they don't need to be. They just need to be functional. Right now, they're not. There's some hope on the horizon. Getting Ed Oliver back would be a big boost. He's undersized by traditional standards, but incredibly strong and explosive. He's been a real asset when healthy and provides much-needed stability in the middle. You also might see some subtle philosophical shifts. One of the ideas being floated is actually going back to more nickel defense. As crazy as that sounds, when the run defense is already struggling, it might make sense. Why? Because Taron Johnson is one of the most reliable tacklers on the team. He plays with linebacker-level toughness from the slot and consistently fits the run well. If your third linebacker can't be trusted to stay in his gap, maybe your nickel corner is a better bet. At least with Johnson, you know he's going to be where he's supposed to be, even if he's not quite the player he once was. Of course, that idea only works if you trust your defensive tackles to hold up without the extra linebacker. And that goes back to the same issue. You need Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones on the field together. Until that happens, you're probably going to keep seeing the base looks and the same frustrating results. And that brings us to the bigger picture, team building. Because the issues we're seeing this year aren't just bad luck. They're the result of years of decisions. Who you draft, who you re-sign, what type of players you prioritize. This defense was built a certain way, with a certain philosophy. And when all the pieces were healthy, it worked well enough to make the Bills a perennial contender. But now that some of those pieces are aging or injured or gone altogether, that foundation is showing cracks. You've got a scheme that may be getting stale and execution that's slipping because of inexperience or regression. That's a bad combination. You can survive one or the other. Old schemes can work with great players, and young players can thrive in fresh, adaptive systems. But when both fail at the same time, that's when you get exposed. That's what's happening in Buffalo right now. While the run defense has been the most visible issue, the problems don't stop there. The secondary, once the bedrock of this Buffalo defense, has become a question mark. And it all starts at safety. Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde were once the most dependable duo in football, a pair of veterans who played with elite chemistry and anticipation. They masked a lot of deficiencies on this defense over the years. But now, that chapter is over. And what's replaced it is inconsistency, missed assignments, and a glaring lack of reliability. The Bills made what looked like a smart investment when they signed Taylor Rapp. He had starting experience with the Rams, came in with solid tackling ability and a physical play style, and had a full year to learn the system behind Hyde and Poyer. On paper, he looked like the perfect bridge to the future. In reality, it hasn't worked out. Rapp has looked tentative, off balance, and shockingly unreliable, especially in open space, where his missed tackles are piling up. The player who once served as a dependable last line of defense has become a liability. And it's not just physical. His processing seems off. He's hesitating. He's not trusting his keys. And when you hesitate in the NFL, you lose. Next to him is Cole Bishop, a rookie with tremendous athletic upside, but naturally plenty of growing pains. And that's fine. That's expected. Bishop shows flashes of what he can become. His range, his explosiveness, his energy, it's all there. But when you put him next to another high-variance player in Rapp, you've got a problem. You don't have a stabilizing presence back there. You've got chaos. And when your back end is chaotic, your whole defense suffers. Missed alignments, late rotations, poor angles, all of it puts stress on everyone else. It almost feels like Taylor Rapp was miscast. He wasn't brought in to be the high-variance risk-taker. He was supposed to be the veteran stabilizer, the one who made up for rookie mistakes. But now he's the one making those same mistakes. And it's making fans and coaches alike ask the hard question. Is this just who he is? Was he ever that stabilizing force to begin with? Or was he simply elevated in the past by being surrounded by steadier players? When Rapp played next to Damar Hamlin, for example, he looked more balanced, more focused. Maybe it was because Hamlin played more within the scheme, didn't freelance as much, and gave Rapp a clearer picture to work off. But now, with Bishop next to him, both players are looking to each other for answers. And neither has them. What's really tricky here is that the talent is evident. These are not untalented players. Rapp, Bishop, even the corners, they can run, they can hit, they can flash. But the communication is off. The trust isn't there. And it's showing up in the way the Bills are defending the pass. You're seeing more soft coverages, more spot drop zone, and quarterbacks are feasting on it. Let's talk about that zone. Because if you've watched the Bills' defense lately, you've probably seen it. Defenders standing in grass, covering air, while wide receivers sit down in the soft spots and move the chains. It's frustrating, and it's happening way too often. This spot drop style zone, also called country cover, is designed to simplify responsibilities. Players drop into pre-assigned areas and read the quarterback's eyes. In theory, it keeps everything in front and lets you rally to the ball. It's the kind of coverage you might run when you don't fully trust your back in to match up in man or match style zone. And that's the real issue. The Bills aren't playing this way because it's optimal. They're playing it because it's safe, because they don't trust their personnel to hold up in more aggressive coverage schemes. But the problem with playing it safe in the NFL is that quarterbacks are too good. They're too smart. They know how to manipulate zone coverage. They can move safeties with their eyes, force defenders to expand into dead zones, and pick you apart with quick throws. That's exactly what's been happening. Against teams like the Falcons, the Bills gave up chunk play after chunk play. Not because the receivers were blowing past them, but because the coverage was so passive that every route had space to breathe. Look no further than what Drake London did. The Falcons were short-handed at wide receiver, yet London was targeted constantly and effectively. He wasn't beating defenders over the top. He was finding the soft spots, sitting down, turning around, and picking up 8 or 9 yards at a time. And the Bills let it happen, over and over again. Why? Because they were dropping into zones and letting him dictate the route. There was no disruption, no hesitation forced. It was all too easy. When you line up in spot drop zone, you give the advantage to the receiver, especially a smart, physical one like London. He just finds the window and becomes an easy target for the quarterback. And you can't expect your pass rush to save you every play. When the quarterback is getting the ball out quickly on rhythm throws, your pressure won't matter. There's a deeper philosophical issue here. This is still Sean McDermott's defense. Even with Bobby Babbage calling plays, the blueprint comes from the top. And that blueprint for years has been about zone-heavy, assignment-sound football that limits big plays. And when everyone was healthy and experienced, it worked. But now that you've got rookies and high-variance players across the board, the same plan is producing diminishing returns. You can't run the same philosophy with different players and expect the same results. That's what this season is exposing. You've got a defensive identity that hasn't evolved, paired with execution that's fallen off. And when those two things intersect, you get a defense that looks average at best and porous at worst. To be fair, there are glimpses of adjustments. The defense did settle in during the second half against the Falcons and Patriots. They tightened things up. The tackling improved. The communication looked sharper. So there's still hope. And maybe once players like Michael Hoy and Maxwell Harrison are fully integrated, we'll see more aggressive looks, more man coverage, more creativity. But at this point, the margin for error is gone. The defense can't keep playing from behind, hoping to make up for early game failures. They need to start faster. They need to trust their athletes. And they need to let guys like Cole Bishop play. Let him make mistakes at full speed rather than holding him back with oversimplified schemes. The Bills aren't out of time yet, but they're running out of it. The defense doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to stop being the problem. Because if the issues don't get cleaned up, if tackling doesn't improve, if the coverage doesn't tighten, if the scheme doesn't adjust, this season could slip away fast. Before we dive back in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest Buffalo Bills updates straight to your screen. And hey, don't hold back. Let us know your thoughts on today's news down in the comments. Whispers are swirling through Buffalo as fans and insiders alike speculate on the potential impact of Devin Singletary's rumored return to the Bills. After a roller coaster season that left the team searching for consistency in their backfield, the chatter growing louder suggests that the motor himself could be back in town, bringing stability and a sense of familiarity that Buffalo desperately needs. Singletary, known for his relentless work ethic and ability to turn modest gaps into big gains, has always been a reliable piece in the Bills' offensive puzzle. Sources close to the team hint that negotiations have been quietly progressing behind closed doors, with the front office reportedly confident they can strike a deal that brings him back into the fold. The Bills' rushing attack has felt the absence of a dependable ground game, and with Singletary's return, insiders speculate that the offensive playbook could open up in unexpected ways. His ability to contribute both as a runner and a receiver out of the backfield gives the team flexibility, and fans are buzzing with the possibility of seeing the familiar sight of Singletary powering through defensive lines once more. Some insiders go so far as to say that his presence could relieve pressure on Josh Allen, allowing the quarterback to make more calculated decisions without the constant threat of defensive overloads. Of course, rumors are just that, rumors, but the consistency Singletary brings is undeniable. Coaches reportedly value not just his production on the field, but his leadership in the locker room, his knack for mentoring younger backs, and his commitment to the team's culture. If the whispers turn into reality, Buffalo could see a shift in momentum early in the season, with the backfield finally finding the stability that has eluded it. Fans, meanwhile, are already speculating about what Singletary's return could mean for fantasy football drafts and game day dynamics. While no official announcement has been made, the excitement is palpable. Could this be the move that reignites the Bills' ground game and solidifies their offensive identity? All eyes are on Buffalo, waiting to see if the motor is indeed revving up for another run in blue. That's a wrap for now. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay on top of all things Buffalo Bills, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what you think in the comments. See you in the next update.